Today, as part of the Campervan electric series, I'm going to talk about fuses. These are, in all honesty, the most important part of any electrical system, be it in a campervan, a car, your house, a hotel, anything with electricity. The most important part is the fuse, and not just the fuse, but where you put the fuse for it to do its job effectively. Now, all of these appear to be the same, but there's only two types of equipment, item, component, call it what you want. There's only two different types here, and that we can separate into them two types as fuses and breakers. And so, as if by magic, I wave my hand over them. Can you guess what it is yet, or which ones are which? And there we are. We've got two categories. That was the word I was hunting for, children. These are breakers. We'll come back to them, but these are all fuses. And you get the good old-fashioned, I caught it, you get the good old-fashioned ceramic or glass type fuse, which goes into holders, kind of that shape or this kind of shape, and aren't as favourable. I don't know, if you've got like a panel, then maybe so, but the more common types you're going to find vehicle-wise or campervan-wise is these. These are the kind that go inside equipment, but they do the same job as these, except when they're popped, you can't swap them as easy as this. So we've got the micro or mini type of fuse, and you can see whether that's in good condition because you can see the metal strip inside, but they have been known in the past to fail just at one end, so it appears that the horseshoe piece is still intact, but it's actually broken down here. So don't always trust your eyes with these. If you can get a simple cheap fuse tester, it's worth the investment. Also, just pulling that fuse out and putting another one in to verify it that way. Then we've got the bigger type. This type has the same setup as this one, and it can suffer from the same defect. And then this third type, you can't see through the sides of it, so the only way to check this one is through the top. You can see it inside. This is a bit harder to see when it's popped, but just taking it out and putting a known good one in is as good a test as any, if time consuming. Now, the way that these work is the hoop of metal inside the fuse is designed that at a certain amount of power being drawn through it, a certain amount of current, that metal piece gets hot and melts. How much power that takes is usually stamped very badly on the top. You can see that's a 20 amp fuse. At 20 amps, nothing much is going to happen. At 22 amps, still nothing is going to happen. Maybe at 25 amps it might start and get warm and the heat might build up, and at 25 amps it might pop in an hour. At 30 amps it might take it 15 seconds. It's not an exact science with these things, but normally when a cable gets shorted, you're talking a lot of amps. 100 amps in an instant can fly through that cable, and that will cause this to pop, in less than a second. So that's where these come in. That's the job of your fuse. It's to protect against shorts or equipment that goes short. It's not to protect the equipment, it's to protect the supply of power and the cables that are supplying that power. Turning our attention to the breaker variety, the way that these work is when an excessive amount of current or power is drawn through them, they internally get hot and they don't pop or burn out the metal inside like a fuse. They actually get hot, and then the metal inside them, there's normally two moving pieces that move apart and cut the power off. If you think of how a switch works, we have a video on that. If you think of how a switch works, that's exactly what these do, and they open and spring open with the heat. But the thing is, then when they cool down, they shut again. So I'm not a big fan of these for automotive use as such, because if a cable's got trapped somewhere and it's shorted out to the body, then these things are going to keep opening and closing every few minutes, and that's going to cause the cables to get hot. Hot cables start to smoke, smoke turns to fire, and you know, not a fan. Sooner have a fuse than a breaker. If it's something that does need a breaker, and there's very small amounts of equipment that does, but if it does, I don't see why, say if you're using a 40 amp breaker, you can't also have a 60 amp fuse. So if the cable does get short, that instantaneous hundreds of amps will take out the fuse, because the fuse will pop faster than the breaker can open inside. Because this has a heating element effect, it takes a second or two for it to get hot and to move and open, whereas the fuse will go in a second or less. So I think all breakers should be protected by fuses, but who's to say? I just like the double safety of things. This is another style of breaker which I've taken apart for you, but as you can see, this is the common style. Sometimes they bolt on, sometimes they have a cable into either side of them. I'm sorry for wobbling the camera about, but it's in bits. Let's see how it works. On the back we have as two connections to bring power in and power out. Now on this one it is actually marked battery and auxiliary, which I suppose means battery and equipment. And the way that this works is, in one side we have it connected to this metal square, and what that metal square does is, when you take more than the 40 amps that this one is rated for, that metal gets hot and it bends upwards, so it doesn't connect anymore to the contact underneath. And like the opening of a switch, it breaks the circuit. I think I can actually make that move, actually, if I give it a bit of heat. Right, so now I'm going to hit it with the heat gun, warm it up a bit, pretend that we're drawing more than 40 amps, and you'll see it just opens like a switch, and then when it cools it'll close itself again. There we go. Come on. There we go. And one more time. Ka-ching. Now you've seen what that does. This one's a bit different, because this normally doesn't close itself. It has this little stick, which I think is called a flag. I could be wrong on that. And this goes inside here, and it has a spring to twist it, and when the bimetal strip pops up, this twists and goes underneath it so that it can't pop back down. So that way, once it's been popped, it stays popped until you come across it and press this stick back up to move it back out the way for a second go. So these can be reset by you, whereas those reset on their own, just as we saw this one doing without the flag. And that's basically it. There's the spring that moves the flag, and then we have this piece here which connects to the big red button so that you can trip it without needing 40 amps. So you could use it as an on and off switch, but that's not its design. Mechanically it's going to wear out if it's used as an on and off switch 20 times a day. It's not advisable for that, but there is times when, say in an emergency, you may need to cut the power, and since this is a bolt-on, you've not got a method of doing that. So by pushing the big red button, you can press on this, which pulls this strip up, and then the flag jumps underneath. So this imitates the effect of the heat moving the bimetal strip. So hey presto, that's how these work. I think we all know how these kind of fuses work. Sorry, my heat gun wire's in the way. We all know how these kind of fuses work. Okay, we've now set it up with the flag, and you'll be able to see this move when it pops. So we'll just warm it up again, give it a bit of heat. There we go. But now it can't go back down because the plastic piece has gone underneath. So the power's been cut. The only way to put the power back on is to take that and turn it. And there, we're back again. And one more time. Come on. There we go. As if by magic. Well, I've taken what I'll continue to call the flag out so that you can see how the big red button works, and that is that it presses down here on this little seesaw piece, and that breaks the connection. And not only does it break the connection, but by giving space between the contacts, the spring can pull the flag down between and keep it in the off position. All I have to do now is find where the spring has gone. So there you are. It's all back together. You've seen the insides, and I hope you have a better understanding of how these things work. But now the thing is, where do we put them? Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button. Have a cupcake. Bye.